Welcome to Seductive Chronicles. Today's story isn't loud. It won't shake you with drama or dazzle you with twists. But if you let it in, if you sit with it, breathe with it, it will find the softest, most unguarded corner of your heart and settle there quietly. Because today we're talking about something no one prepares you for. No one hands you a manual. No one warns you about the particular kind of love that looks like staying. The love that shows up, not in grand gestures, but in a bowl of warm oatmeal at sunrise, in a phone call made every single day, in a son who boards a plane without warning because some things simply cannot wait. Before we step into today's story, my friend, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button. Not because it helps the channel, though it does, but because every story shared here carries a heartbeat, a whisper of truth. A lesson that life hides in the most ordinary moments, tucked beneath the surface, invisible until we're finally forced to face it. So subscribe, stay with me until the very last second, and let's take this journey together. One emotion, one memory, one quiet breath at a time. The morning sun slipped slowly through the thin curtains, almost cautiously, as if it too had learned to move gently in this house. It painted soft golden lines across the silent room, long, warm stripes that touched the furniture, the carpet, the framed photographs on the wall. Photographs of a younger couple, a man with strong hands and wide shoulders, a woman whose laugh seemed to fill every inch of every frame. This house, the house Mary had called home for over 3 decades, still stood tall, still held its shape, but it breathed differently now. There was a time when these walls pulsed with life, when laughter didn't just visit, it lived here. Arguments began with raised voices and ended with giggles. Footsteps raced through the hallway at all hours. Pots and pans clattered in the kitchen in a beautiful, chaotic rhythm, and woven through all of it, like a warm undercurrent, was the smell of Richard's coffee, strong, rich, a little too sweet, brewed exactly the way only he liked it. Now the house spoke in whispers. Now it moved carefully. The way you move around something precious and fragile. Afraid that one wrong step might disturb what remains. The only steady sound was the soft, mechanical hum of the oxygen machine perched beside the recliner near the window. Richard's chair now. The place where he spent most of his hours. The place where the morning light found him first. Mary stood beside him, as she did every morning. Her hands that had spent decades being steady, being confident, being capable now trembled slightly as she stirred a bowl of softened oatmeal. She leaned close enough to feel the warmth of his skin, and whispered the same 4 words she had whispered for more mornings than she could count. "Good morning, my love." Richard's eyes opened slowly. Each blink seemed measured, deliberate, as if the simple act of waking cost him something. His gaze drifted, then found hers, and there it was, tired, faded around the edges, but unmistakably full of recognition, full of her. He tried to smile. The right side of his face barely moved. The stroke had taken pieces of him, pieces she had memorized, and now mourned quietly, never out loud. The arms that once carried her upstairs, on a whim. The voice that used to fill a room without effort. The hands that fixed everything, broken faucets, broken shelves. Broken moods now struggled to rise even an inch from the armrest, but his eyes were the same eyes. The love in them was the same love, just quieter now, more careful, like sunlight through thin curtains. And so she stayed, not because she had to, not because there was no one else, but because 33 years of mornings had written something into her bones that no doctor could diagnose or any circumstance could undo. She stayed because leaving wasn't a thought that lived in her body. She stayed the way a tree stays in its soil, not by decision, but by nature. Every day, every hour, every breath. One afternoon, while Mary stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes, her phone buzzed against the counter. She glanced at the screen without turning off the faucet. Daniel, her son. Her only child. The one who had moved to Seattle 5 years ago for a job that turned into a career, then a life. He called every single day, sometimes twice. No matter how meetings ran over, no matter what time zones collided, he always called. She dried her hands and answered with the voice she always used for him, warm, practiced, slightly lifted at the edges. The voice that said, "I'm fine," before he even asked. "Hey, sweetheart." "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was warm, but underneath it, she heard it immediately. The way only a mother hears things, there was worry. "How are you holding up today?" She paused. Just briefly. The way you pause before choosing between the truth and the version of it that protects someone you love. "We're managing," she said. Gently. Daniel heard it. That small crack she tried to smooth over. That pause that lasted half a second too long. "Mom," he said. Softer now. "You don't have to pretend with me." And that was the thing about Daniel. He never pushed. He never demanded. He simply opened a door and waited. And the truth, which Mary had been holding carefully between her ribs for weeks, finally pressed too hard against her chest to contain. Her body sank into the kitchen chair. The weight of everything she'd been carrying, the sleepless nights, the medical appointments, the endless balancing act of caregiving and grief and love, settled visibly onto her shoulders. "I just miss the way things used to be," she whispered. It wasn't a complaint. It wasn't weakness. It was simply the truest thing she could say. For a moment, neither of them spoke. But the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of understanding that doesn't require words. The kind that only exists between people who have been watching each other for a lifetime. "Mom," Daniel said, "you've been doing this alone for months. You need a break. Even just a few days, please." "I can't leave your father," she murmured. Her voice was quiet, but the words were a wall. "Mom, you're burning out. And Dad would want you to rest too. You know he would." She promised she'd think about it. She wouldn't. They both knew it. Her heart was exhausted to its foundation. But her love was the stubborn kind, the kind that doesn't know how to step back, that interprets rest as abandonment. 33 years of that kind of love doesn't learn new habits easily, she promised, and they said their goodbyes. And she set the phone on the counter and stood there for a moment in the quiet kitchen, looking out the window at the fading afternoon light. That evening, as she moved through the living room folding laundry, a small, reliable task that had always steadied her hands when her mind grew restless, a sound broke through the stillness. A knock at the door. She stopped, set down the shirt she was holding. Visitors were rare now. Life had gotten smaller in the way it sometimes does, slowly. Then, all at once, she crossed the room and opened the door, and froze. Daniel stood on the porch, tall, tired, rain still dripping from the shoulders of his jacket, his hair damp from the walk from the cab, but he was smiling. That warm, unreserved, slightly crooked smile, the one she'd been looking at since the day he was born, the one that still, after all these years, had the power to make her feel like the world hadn't ended. "Daniel," she breathed. What are you doing here?" He shrugged, as though it were the simplest thing in the world. "I took a few days off. I needed to see you. But sweetheart, your work is still going to be there Monday." He stepped forward and put his arms around her. "You're more important than work, Mom." And that was the moment. The moment the door she'd been holding shut, not by choice, but by habit, finally swung open. She pressed her face against his shoulder and felt everything she'd been holding so carefully begin to loosen. Relief, sadness, love that had nowhere left to go, exhaustion she hadn't admitted to herself. Gratitude so sharp it almost hurt. All of it, tangled together, rising in one long, quiet exhale. She didn't cry. Not at first. She just held on, and Daniel, her boy, who had grown into this steady, perceptive man she hadn't fully seen arriving, held on too. Held her the way you hold someone when you finally understand the weight they've been carrying. Not trying to fix it. Not offering solutions or schedules or optimism. Just present. Just there. just enough. There is a kind of love that never announces itself. It doesn't arrive in monologues or milestone moments. It doesn't ask to be noticed or applauded or remembered. It shows up in the small hours of an ordinary morning, with trembling hands and softened oatmeal and 4 words whispered as if they are a prayer. It shows up in a phone call made every single day, even when there is nothing new to say, because the call itself is the message. It shows up in a rain-soaked jacket on a doorstep, and a shrug, and I needed to see you. This is what love actually looks like in its truest form. Not the version sold to us in songs and films, not the grand declaration or the dramatic rescue. The real version. The version that stays in a house that breathes differently now. The version that carries weight it never talks about. The version that crosses a time zone on a Tuesday with no fanfare and no advance warning. Simply because someone who matters is tired and doesn't know it yet. Mary would spend the next 3 days letting herself be cared for. Just a little. She wouldn't stop being a wife. She wouldn't stop sitting beside Richard's chair and whispering good morning. But she would also let Daniel bring her tea. She would sit with him at the kitchen table long after dinner, talking about nothing and everything, the way they used to. She would sleep a full night, more than once. And Richard, who understood more than his words could still carry, would watch his son cross the room toward him and manage something with the left side of his face that, if you looked closely, if you knew what you were looking for, was unmistakably a smile. This story is not extraordinary. That's the point. It is happening right now, in houses like this one, on streets in every city, in every country in the world. It is happening wherever love has aged into something quieter, where care has become the primary language, where a person sits beside an oxygen machine and stirs oatmeal and calls it a morning dot. And if you are living a version of this story, if you are the one staying, or the one calling every day, or the one who just showed up in the rain, I want you to hear this. What you are doing is not small. The world will not build monuments to it. There will be no ceremony, no applause. But what you are doing is one of the most profoundly human things a person can do. You are choosing love when it costs something. You are staying when staying is hard. You are showing up, again and again, in the quiet and the difficult and the unwitnessed. That matters. More than you know. More than anyone will say out loud. Don't forget to take care of yourself too. Rest when Daniel shows up at the door. Let people in. You are not less loving for needing to breathe. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If it moved something in you, if it reminded you of someone, or something you've been feeling and couldn't name, share it with them. Sometimes the stories we need most are the ones we're too tired to go looking for. Subscribe to Seductive Chronicles. Come back. There are more stories waiting, each one a heartbeat, a whisper, a lesson tucked inside an ordinary moment. I'll see you in the next one.